Tens of thousands of years ago, long before history and civilization, there was another type of human being. They were not our ancestors, but our rivals. Stronger, more resistant. Survivors adapted to the rigor of the Ice Age. They were the Neanderthals, brilliant, enigmatic, and now extinct. But how did they disappear, and could their legacy remain alive within us? Join us on this journey to the lost world of the Neanderthals, although the exact chronologies remain somewhat uncertain. Researchers generally believe that these first humans occupied several regions of Eurasia from approximately 400,000 to 40,000 years ago. This long period largely coincides with the Chibanian stage of the Pleistocene epoch, a period marked by significantly cooler climates throughout Eurasia and full of huge prehistoric animals that made life extremely challenging. In response to such a relentless environment, the Neanderthals developed some of the most extraordinary physical traits observed among members of the Homo genus, traits that by modern standards could even be considered superhuman in certain respects. At first glance, their bodily differences from us would not have been immediately remarkable, except for one outstanding feature: their height. Fossil records reveal that Neanderthals on average were noticeably shorter than modern humans, measuring approximately 14 centimeters, or 5.5 inches, less than populations after the Second World War. The tallest Neanderthal ever discovered, known as Ahmud I, is estimated to have reached a height of 1.78 centimeters, or about 5 feet 10 inches, a figure that today seems relatively common. However, compared to populations in Europe about 20,000 years ago, Neanderthals were actually the same height, or slightly more. In essence, our understanding of their maximum height remains somewhat ambiguous. What really distinguishes them, however, is that despite being shorter, Neanderthals were significantly more corpulent. Males are believed to have averaged a weight of up to 83 kilograms, or 183 pounds, while females typically weighed around 66 kilograms, or 146 pounds, figures that place them about 20% heavier than Homo sapiens. This seemingly contradictory information comes from the fact that Neanderthals possessed incredibly dense and compact skeletons, much stronger than ours, with almost every bone being substantially thicker and sometimes even twice as heavy. Neanderthals exhibited remarkably robust physiques, particularly in areas such as shoulders, femurs, chest, triceps, arms, and kneecaps, all exceptionally thick and muscular. These characteristics suggest they were incredibly strong and powerful, a trait widely accepted by researchers who agree that Neanderthals were much more physically capable than modern humans. This strength was probably an adaptation to their unique hunting strategies, which involved the use of large spears to hunt medium and large prey, including several species of rhinos, horses, elephants, and woolly mammoths. These creatures, similar in size to present-day African savanna elephants, had thick layers of hair that made them particularly difficult to hunt. Speaking of African savanna elephants, like their woolly relatives, they are now endangered, with their numbers having decreased drastically. -50% of the global population disappeared in just 3 generations. Constant and intense use of spears is considered by some researchers to be a factor that contributed to the Popeye-like arm muscles observed in many Neanderthal remains, which would have allowed them to handle these weapons with tremendous strength. In addition, the well-developed musculature of their arms and overall physique could be an indication of high levels of certain hormones. One study suggests that Neanderthals possessed an abundance of hormones that not only boosted muscle growth, but also allowed them to perform extraordinary feats of strength. For example, it is believed that they could carry up to 27 kilograms, 60 pounds of meat over distances up to 48 kilometers, 30 miles, equivalent to walking 138 laps around a football field. Their broad chests, shoulders, and triceps suggest they would have excelled in strength-based activities such as wrestling and powerlifting, if they still existed today. There is a hypothesis that Neanderthal males could have bench-pressed up to 200 kilograms, 440 pounds, without any specific training, while females may have been able to lift 160 kilograms, 350 pounds. To put this in perspective, lifting 2/3 of those amounts would already be considered elite by modern human standards. Their short, stocky build significantly contributed to this strength, but it wasn't just brute power that came with their physique. This robustness also gave them an impressive level of durability, crucial to survive the hard and often violent lives they led. A study of Neanderthal skeletons revealed that between 79% and 94% showed evidence of serious injuries that had healed over time. These injuries ranged from impact trauma to traumatic amputations, A particularly shocking case was reconstructed from an ancient Neanderthal, who had lost his right arm in his youth, suffered damage to the left collarbone, endured severe facial wounds that left him blind in one eye, and had received so much repeated damage to the ears that his ear canals closed completely due to bone growth, leaving him completely deaf. It is believed that the frequent injuries observed in Neanderthal remains are the result of a combination of their aggressive short-distance hunting methods, interpersonal violence, and encounters with dangerous animals. Surprisingly, almost 74% of Neanderthals, according to one study, showed signs of having survived violent animal attacks, to 21% involving large cats, 17% with wolves, and 36% with bears. What's even more surprising is that these encounters with animals were not usually predatory attempts. Instead, they seem to have been instances in which the animals were defending themselves from Neanderthal aggression. To add to their resilience, Neanderthal skin was also adapted to their harsh environment. Genetic studies have found that they had thicker skin, nails, and hair, which likely helped them withstand physical damage and extreme cold conditions. Additionally, their large joints were another adaptation that allowed them to perform strenuous activities, such as lifting heavy loads or engaging in intense physical combat, tasks that would have been extremely difficult, if not impossible, for Homo sapiens. Neanderthal hands were not longer but were markedly different from ours. Their fingertips were wider and their thumbs were set at a broader angle, which likely influenced their grip. Some researchers believe this manual structure may have reduced their ability for fine motor skills, but it was probably compensated by their ability to hold and grip objects with immense strength. Neanderthals were undeniably impressive, not only in their outward appearance, but also in their internal structure. One of their most striking features being their broad, barrel-shaped chests. These large chests housed a wider ribcage and larger lungs, allowing them to inhale more air. Studies have shown that, on average, Neanderthals had 20% greater lung capacity than modern humans. However, this figure varies, and some exceptional Neanderthals had even greater lung capacity. For example, the Kabara man likely had lungs that could hold up to 9 liters of air, to 40% more than a typical modern human. Until recently, the largest lung capacity ever recorded in an athlete was only 8.5 liters. The noses of Neanderthals also supported their ability to inhale large amounts of air. Their long, wide nasal passages helped them move air more efficiently, potentially making them 100% more effective at inhaling air than any modern human. This need for rapid breathing, along with their impressive lung capacity, is believed to have been an adaptation to help Neanderthals survive in cold climates. Animals in cold environments typically evolved toward faster metabolisms to cope with greater heat loss, and Neanderthals were no exception. Their increased energy needs reflect this, as a Neanderthal is thought to have required between 4,500 and 6,700 calories per day. This means that if Neanderthals had survived, food products would probably need 2 different nutrition labels, one for Homo sapiens and one for Neanderthals. Their voluminous noses would also have helped them warm and humidify the cold, dry air they breathed, although their system was designed for efficiency. One might assume Neanderthals were exceptional long-distance runners, capable of chasing prey for prolonged journeys, like modern humans. However, this was not the case. Neanderthals were actually poor endurance runners and were better adapted for short bursts of speed. Various features support this, such as the length and width of their feet, which allowed them to generate more power and faster starts by maintaining ground contact longer. Their relatively short leg bones further supported this ability. Since modern endurance athletes usually have longer legs for longer strides, Neanderthal Achilles tendons were also not designed for long-distance running. They were long and narrow, which made them less capable of storing the energy necessary for extended runs. In contrast, endurance athletes tend to have short, rigid, and broad Achilles tendons, which are more efficient for storing and releasing energy during long runs. Although the Neanderthals' extremities were clearly built for speed rather than endurance, the real evidence of their power and agility lies in something less visible: their muscle fibers. Humans have different types of muscle fibers, each specialized for different levels of power and endurance. Fast-twitch fibers are used for quick bursts of energy, while slow-twitch fibers support endurance activities. Like modern humans, Neanderthals had a mixture of both, but with a significantly higher concentration of fast-twitch fibers, likely an adaptation to their hunting methods, which required short, explosive bursts of speed to close the distance with prey. This means that if Neanderthals were somehow revived, challenging them to a marathon probably wouldn't be your best idea. They were built for sprinting, not distance running. All this power and speed was complemented by a surprisingly large brain. Neanderthal male skulls averaged